balance of nature, companionship, and the externalized journey. Acting as emotional support and companion, the role of nature is a key element to Ella Montgomery's heroine's well-being and inevitable journey to fulfillment and satisfaction. This role is none better exemplified in Montgomery's writing than in her 1926 novel, The Blue Castle. Once the heroine of The Blue Castle, Valancy Sterling, is surrounded by the forests of Mistowix, she is able to develop into the woman she's always desired to be. This immersion in nature and consequential awakening of a heroine leading to her personal growth is evident not only in Montgomery's literary works, but in the writings of other female authors. In Kate Chopin's 1899 novel, The Awakening, for instance, heroine Edna Pontellier begins her personal journey of growth after discovering the joys of swimming in the ocean. Through the borderless, undomesticated natural environment, the hidden internal journeys of Montgomery's and Chopin's heroines transform the inactive, intangible realm and evolve into an external journey. Roni Natov's study of internal and external journeys in children's literature claims the internal journey utilizes the power of the imagination to overcome restrictive forces in order to find creative solutions. Through intentional imagination and emotional growth, an internal journey is the story of the movement from one psychological stage to another. Valancy's and Edna's ability to hope and then manifest their idealized lives into existence displays their transition from an internal to an external journey. Careful and comprehensive psychological change, developing into tangible action. By leaving the initial space that represented their complacency, taking control over their destiny and making active choices, the heroines recontextualize their story as external. Part of the attraction of these feminine heroes to the natural wild is the elusive, uncontrollable character of untamed, unexplored nature. Stacey Alamo defines this as undomesticated nature. The wily, unpredictable movement and strength of the ocean and the vast mystery and beauty of the forest lure the heroines deeper into their inner selves. Upon finally arriving at her long-awaited Blue Castle, Valancy, quote, left behind the realm of everyday and things known, and landed on a realm of mystery and enchantment where anything might happen, anything might be true. Edna of The Awakening reflects on a childhood memory in which she walked through a meadow that seemed as big as the ocean. She sometimes feels as if she is walking through the green meadow again, idly, unthinking, and unguided. These borderless free spaces provide a refuge in which Valancy and Edna are at liberty to imagine and manifest their new realities. Notable Montgomery scholar Elizabeth Epperly defines this experience as a communion with nature, a reciprocal, animated interaction that renews the spirit or awakens it. In this way, the heroines are introduced to their own hidden psyche, as they are provided a tangible, grounded means of expressing their innermost thoughts and feelings. They see themselves reflected in the natural world and are drawn to it as they search for understanding and to transition into their external journeys. In the process of externalizing their journeys, Valancy and Edna ground their newfound freedom in the visceral and tangible wilds of nature. As they venture further from their familial homes and traditionally domestic lives, their natural environments and the people associated with those environments provide a necessary escape. In these novels, the natural world represents self-expression, companionship, and the self-actualization of their externalized journeys. The natural world gives the heroines access to their own internal desires and ideas of selfhood. Once they become enveloped and immersed within these natural environments, the heroines are able to fully actualize and externalize their desires, using the mode of the natural as a catalyst for self-discovery. Valancy Sterling's fascination with the natural world begins long before she explores it herself, having secretly hankered for nature as she read about the woods in private, immersing herself in the way she could while living in the oppressive Sterling household. Through the words of Barney Snaith, guised under the pseudonym John Foster, Valancy receives an early education in the natural world she so admires, claiming that a Foster book about woods was the next best thing to the woods themselves. Once Valancy enters her naturalized new home, she's recontextualized as a new woman full of potential, whereas before she felt stunted and demoralized. It is in this naturalized space that Valancy is born again, and her hopes and desires are externalized through the exposition of the natural world. In the woods, she is free to experiment with her own self and identity, and is finally given the space to fully express herself without the eyes of the critical and controlling Sterling clan. Ashley N. Reese claims that Valancy's relationship with nature and her own self herself does not bloom until she leaves the domestic space of control she grew up in. Montgomery's metaphor of Valancy's rosebush serves this idea. Under the critical, judgmental eye of her mother, Mrs. Frederick Sterling, Valancy's rosebush never bloomed. It is not until Valancy has returned to the Sterling home as a new woman that she discovers her rosebush is covered in great, crimson, velvety blossoms. Reese insists that, in keeping Valancy from nature, Mrs. Sterling prevents Valancy from blossoming into her true self. When she is surrounded by the natural world she's admired for so long, Valancy's self-confidence and expression of self flourishes, exhibiting the progression of her externalized journey. In The Awakening, Chopin's heroine Edna Pontellier is similarly introduced to the joys of nature through her first lover, Robert Lebrun. In contrast to Valancy's love of forests, Edna's journey begins with her love of the sea. When she was first taught how to swim, a feeling of exaltation overtook her, as if some power of significant import had been given to her to control the working of her body and her soul. Edna's experience swimming reframes her perspective on life, and according to Myung Kang, it represents the culmination of her awakening. It is the sea that unleashes and embodies Edna's desire, marking the beginning of Edna's externalized journey. Prior to this transition, Edna claims to have had a rich internal world, professing that even as a child she had lived her own small life within herself. However, now with the introduction and submersion of self into a wholly natural and boundaryless environment, the olfactory senses trigger the power of her new self, and Edna transitions into an external journey. From this moment on, Edna, similar to Valancy, begins to make choices that directly oppose the late Victorian society she once participated in, and operates from her own internal desires, manipulating her external world to express her internal one. For instance, she participates in affairs outside of her marriage, she dismisses her domestic and societal duties, her motherly affection for her children falters, and any obligations to her husband are flatly ignored. Most notably, Edna moves into the Pigeon House, a cottage-esque home round the block. Quote, "There's a feeling of having descended in the social scale, with a corresponding sense of having risen in the spiritual. Every step which she took towards relieving herself from obligations added to her strength and expansion as an individual." This change of environment does not completely absolve Edna of societal pressures. However, it relieves her of the burden of her husband's influence over her life and brings her closer to herself through external action. Edna desires solitude, individuality, and agency, and she is rewarded for her choices, despite the isolation she faces when she is most in need of companionship. In Valancy and Edna's journeys, natural environments also offer a much-needed companion amid their changing lives. As the heroines seek freedom and self-actualization, they also seek to be understood, to be known by another who can in turn validate their emotions and the struggles they experience. Arthur Frank defines companion stories as our guides as we wander through life, attempting to configure situations and other persons. As Frank indicates, a companion is meant to reflect and refract the world around us, operating as a guide as we navigate our lives. Without the compass of a companion, the heroines we love become lost and untethered, as we see happen with Edna in The Awakening. In The Blue Castle, Valancy experiences many companions. Missy, Roaring Abel, and even the popular cousin Olive Sterling acts as a subverted companion, reflecting Valancy's desires and aspirations. However, Valancy finds true companionship in her husband, Barney Snaith. They are so comfortable together they often spend afternoons in pleasant silence. Sometimes, quote, "they would sit there and talk for hours, or sit and say nothing, in all the languages of the world," unquote. Not only is Barney there to act as companion, but his companionship offers guidance and support to Valancy as she navigates her newfound freedom. According to Frank, companionship makes us feel less alone. They give us our sense of possibility and impossibility. Companions offer a guide through new environments, and the support and safety they provide encourages others to explore, unbidden by previously held boundaries. With Barney's encouragement, she is able to experience not only a wholly naturalized life, but a life free of societal expectation and responsibilities that exist on the mainland. Valancy's daily life begins to revolve entirely around her own instincts. Sometimes, quote, "she put her bathing dress on and didn't take it off until she went to bed, running down to the water to plunge whenever she felt like it and sprawling on the sun-warm rocks to dry." The exposition of her physical body represents her depth of comfortability and her willingness to reveal her innermost self to Barney and their natural environment. Barney's representation of companionship companionship in the context of nature is so intertwined throughout the novel that nature itself often acts as a companion in place of Barney, providing structure and support during Valancy's transition to the external. Although The Blue Castle and The Awakening hold many similarities that place them in the collective of feminist narratology, the largest difference is how the two heroines are able to navigate their newly externalized lives. Edna is unlike Valancy in that she is unable to find a true companion. However pertinent her female friendships are to her mental and physical well-being, Edna is unable to maintain a consistent and engaged companionship in which she feels wholly seen or understood. As Edna nears the end of her journey, swimming out into open ocean, she remembers Dr. Mandelot and the confidence he offered her. She considers that perhaps Dr. Mandelot would have understood if she had seen him, but it was too late. The shore was far behind her and her strength was gone. Edna is presented an opportunity to receive this witness through companionship, but denies it. Edna prefers that the voice of the sea speak to the soul, and feels that the touch of the sea is sensuous, enfolding the body in its soft, close embrace. Edna's experience with physical and emotional closeness to the ocean intoxicated her. Quote, with her newly conquered power, she swam out alone, unquote, where no woman had swum before. Distinctly alone, the only presence she feels in these formative moments is that of the natural environment enveloping her. In this way, the presence of the ocean becomes a necessary companion to Edna, witnessing and accepting her as she transitions. However, without a human companion to guide her through the wilds of nature, such as Valancy experiences with Barney, Edna fails to properly realize her external journey in a safe and supported way. Although the ocean represents Edna's unity and communion with the natural world, it does not provide salvation in the form of her physical body. Rather, it is her spirit that is gifted freedom of self. Many scholars conclude that although the ending of The Awakening seems ultimately inscrutable, it is highly suggestive of her suicide, representing her final act of defiance and attempt at self-actualization. The removal of her bathing suit is indicative of this action. Facing the waves that invited her, she revels in the moment, quote, how strange and awful it seemed to stand naked under the sky, how delicious. She felt like some newborn creature opening its eyes in a familiar world that it had never known. This display of nakedness as rebirth and new life is essential to the final externalization of her journey in the presence of nature. Quote, stripped down, naked to her true inner and essential self, unquote, she is finally free, mirroring Valancy's comfortability in her own exposed skin. Valancy similarly feels that it was as if I had died and come back to life. With the exposure of their bare bodies to natural environments, both heroines become closer to nature and therefore their own selves. Deirdre Stafford defines Edna in this moment as gloriously naked, resplendent in the essential, her true nature. For Edna, this exposition and consequent submission to the ocean becomes death-defying and death-affirming. Through death, Edna erases the borders between her interior and exterior boundaries, absolving all that she was before and transforming all that contained her, despite the sacrifice she makes for true freedom. In William A. Davis's paper about female self-sacrifice in The Awakening, he says that by swimming out to sea, she kills her body and presumably saves her soul, concluding what both The Blue Castle and The Awakening strive for: survival of self through nature, companionship, and the externalized journey. Thank you so much.